Welcome to the Lessons in Living podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Vinder, and today I am really excited to welcome Jennah-Louise onto the podcast, who is an adventurer, an ultra runner. She's completed multiple 100K races and multi-day races. She actually, at the time of recording this, has completed the 114-kilometer trail run in Oman. She was only one of 5 females to complete it. She's incredibly tough and has one of those mindsets that is tough, confident, and we're going to be diving into that today. So welcome, Jennah. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Very honoured to be here.
So why did you get into these adventures and these crazy kind of challenges?
It's a beautiful question. I think I've always had a very innate adventurous spirit. So I would say this certainly dates back to being a child. I was always very curious. I was an only child. I used to sort of spend my time exploring outdoors on my own and climbing trees and things like this. I think that is translated into my adult life now, where I've had defining moments that I have come to question my sense of authenticity and what I'm here to do. And I think there's been moments when I studied law and politics or I was in corporate and things just didn't feel quite aligned or congruent. And I always found that some form of endurance experience was the gateway for me to be able to connect with the answers of what to do next, and also to be able to help me expand my own sense of self and potential and what I'm capable of. It always feels like quite a stepping stone for me. And so I find that I utilize it generally as a tool for self-exploration and development. And I think now, because I've seen the benefits of this, I'm starting to build momentum on this. And I think my connection and use of it initially is now sort of developing a lot more as I continue to have these experiences.
So when you signed up for your first ever race, or what even was it? And what was going through your head? Obviously you wanted to explore yourself and your purpose on this earth, but talk to me about what was going through your head.
Yeah, so during my 20s, I'd done sort of military inspired events. You had those endurance ones like 12 hours, 24 hours. And I was always really successful in those. I found that I had, again, this sort of innate sense of certainty that I could endure. And when I got to my 30th birthday, again, I found myself at a moment in life where I was just not quite sure of the next step. And I do believe that synchronicities are milestones, and there are a cast of characters that come into our life to be able to guide us on a path that is true to us. And I had met someone that had successfully completed an ultramarathon called the Track, which is held in the middle of Australia. It's a 10-day event, 522 kilometers, and it's self-sufficient, so you carry about 10 kilos on your back. And I suppose the somewhat spontaneous aspect of my personality lit up when he spoke about this, and I thought, you know what? This is certainly turned one of the most difficult ultramarathons in the world. My certainty is I probably can't finish this with 3 to 4 months of training that would be required before that. But there was something that excited me about getting out there and seeing what I was made of. And so I signed up. Again, I only had 3 to 4 months training, which some people had been training for a year. Most people had ultramarathon experiences before this. So I went in with a mixture of, there was somewhat naivety, but it was also kind of a arrogant naivety where I was like, I know this is bigger than me. And so when I went out there and I began to have that experience, I ended up actually getting injured on the second day. I fell. And when you have 10 kilos on your back and you're as petite as me, things don't go well. And so my body started to break down over sort of the following days. And I got to a point where I did quit. And I find that moment extremely pivotal still in my experiences today, because one, I was able to understand a deeper sense of purpose in the things I do and why I do them, that it's not just about finishing or being notably, top 3, for example. For me, it is this deep sense of adventure and self-exploration, and that I was completely fine with being able to get to a point unto which I admit to myself I can't go any further. In reflection of that also, I have come to learn that that day I did have more in me. However, I had to have that lesson to now understand that I did. And so I think that these moments are very important in terms of my coaching as well, as like I do plant the seed of having people, and I mean including yourself actually, planting the seed of really questioning what you think you're capable of and what you actually are. And I just got goosebumps. And I feel like even for you right now, I feel like you're exploring that you're understanding that. I think sometimes we have this capacity in which we learn things are linear, and it's like, okay, I'll do the 10K and then the half marathon, and we sort of move up. And I like to, from my own experience, sort of put it out there to people that like, why can't you go bigger sooner? And if you go in with a certain mindset of adventure and self-exploration, this is obviously separate to like, full-on competitive performance. I do believe that everyone is so much more capable of doing things like this than that what they give themselves credit to, because they limit their own sense of potential and capacity based on how other people operate. And I think I want to bring in more of this sense of like, dream big, get out there and see what you're capable of. And if you can create a win-win mindset of, if I give it my best and I don't finish, I still win because I know what my best was that day and I perform to my capability and capacity and potential, and or I cross that finishing line knowing that I have a lot more within me.
I love that so much. And I agree. I've definitely been on this journey of being like, what? Of like unlocking yourself, I guess, and what you're capable of, all of what you've just explained. You said in that now reflecting on that first challenge where you didn't finish, that you now know that you could have done more. What makes you say that?
Because I've now proceeded to be in experiences where I've wanted to give up and I've given myself a moment to recenter instead. And so I climbed or summited Mero Peak recently in Nepal. It's about 6,500 meters. And on the day of the summit, about an hour in, at about 1 a.m., I was hallucinating. I felt extremely nauseous. I just wanted to sleep on the ground. I was freezing. I ended up having first-degree frostbite. Like, it was really cold. And I remember in that moment thinking, I'm going to have to turn around. I'm not going to make it. And there was something inside of me that thought, just give it a minute. Just recenter. Just take some breaths. Become present. Have some sugar. Like, just give your body a moment to recalibrate and center in. And when I did that, I was able to then put one foot in front of the other. And we proceeded to go from being really behind everyone to summiting first. And it was a very pivotal moment in me understanding that we as human beings in all of our experiences will always ebb and we will always flow. And so in those moments that you think that you cannot give anymore, if you give yourself a moment of pause, I guarantee more times than not, you will be able to recenter and continue on. And so that was a really pivotal experience for me in understanding in anything that I do now, at least give it a chance to pause. Put the ego aside. If you have to renegotiate your goals, if they are competitive, still do it in the spirit of exploring your own potential and teaching your body. And I think that's a huge part of endurance sport is these experiences accumulate and they're remembered. And so a lot of endurance sport, as we're witnessing with ultramarathon running, a lot of these women that we look up to are in their 40s and they are winning. And I do think a lot of it comes down to that experience. It's a lot of life experience as well. And I think it's a partnership between those two. But I do find that from that experience now, I I know that the first time that I want to give up, and I've kind of reframed this, is like when I want to give up, I tell myself I'm just getting started.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think, you know, at endurance sport and in everyday life, like humans, people, we are so much more resilient than what we think that we are. You know, you think about kind of life events that you go through, and you might even reflect on them and be like, I actually have no idea how I got through that. But you did, because you either had to, because you're in, you know, you've just got to get it done, or you've taken that pause and you're not making it a choice. You're like, this is what I'm doing. And we are so much more capable than what we believe we are.
Absolutely.
Sally. Yeah. When you were saying, you said in your previous answer, talking about dream big, think big. How does somebody dream big? Like, how do you even do that? You know, for someone who's listening, you know, where do you even start? I mean, you talked about people coming into your life, maybe having influence, but how does somebody dream big?
Well, what comes to me is whatever you think that you are capable of right now, challenge yourself to do more. It's as simple as that. If you think that you can only do a 10K, think about what would your life look like if you were training for a half marathon instead. Sally, who you just mentioned, she speaks about like what happens if you trained like the champion. Like if you don't actually feel like you are, but what happens if you started training like you are a champion? And I feel like it is that mindset that can certainly help. I think also is community. And I believe that we're both witnessing that. When you begin to, and I mean, I would love your opinion on this, but it is funny when you begin to surround yourself by people that are dreaming big and doing and achieving these big things, your level of what you think you are capable of begins to expand by default. And so something like my 114 kilometer run recently, I've seen has given you a question mark in your head whether your upcoming run of, I think, about 55 would be possible to do 100. And so I think that part is just as important. Don't do it alone. Do it around people that are like-minded and think the same and can encourage that within you.
Yeah, and that is so true. I mean, I feel like I'm going through that right now.
Yeah,
I mean, so I met Jennah through a trail running group, WhatsApp group, and in that group are just these extraordinary, I mean, recently somebody just broke a world record, 700 kilometers I think it was, over 5 days, running all 5 Emirates here in the UAE. I mean, it just puts everything into perspective, and you're like, oh, you know. And
what I want to actually add to that though,
go ahead,
which just came to me, so I'd like to share that whilst I remember what I learned from my recent run, which we can get into if you want, but I met someone that had done something similar. His name is Ash, and when I was out in that run, he had the world record for running across Qatar the fastest. So very similar to our friend.
This is the run in Oman recently, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I realized in that moment that we are all overcoming different obstacles, because and again, we're talking about this expansion of mindset and understanding. If I'd met Ash as the world record holder of running across Qatar the fastest, there's a way in which I compartmentalize him. When I saw him out in Oman, he actually ended up giving up at 60 kilometers because it was too hard for him. The mountains, he said, this is harder than running across Qatar as a world record. And I think that's important, is like, throughout this experience, it's important for us to find our thing too. That if road running isn't your thing, possibly it is the mountains, possibly it is the desert. And to be able to hold an open space for that maybe, you know, we talk about Nicky running across the Emirates, like that's his thing. But if you were to think about what is yours, like think about it from your own personal experience and what you're drawn to and your strengths that are aligned with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like finding the things that you love, the things that resonate with you, and then setting goals, dreaming big in those areas.
Absolutely. And do not be intimidated by one person's win or strengths. Like, continue to revert back to you and what you're capable of and what you're drawn to and what is your truth in this journey.
Yeah.
And for him now, he contacted me recently, and he's now doing the goat race in January just outside of Dubai. And he's like, I'm gonna go until I cross that finish line. And that's his new, hero's journey. It's his new mountain to overcome. And I think that's really beautiful, is what I find here is that no matter how great someone may be, they're still overcoming their own personal obstacles, and they're still on this journey just like you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so good to be able to connect or to plug in with these people, whether that's on, YouTube or in real life, taking inspiration, having those conversations, knocking down barriers, all that stuff. Yeah, it is. I'm definitely on that journey of like opening my mind and perspective as to what's possible. Like, you inspire me, for example, and you're making me question whether, can I run further?
Yes,
maybe,
you can.
maybe, yeah. Jennah thinks so. So
you can
she
at
must
least
be right.
explore it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as I shared, it's important to know what your goal is, because if it's speed and performance and competition, okay, possibly stick with something shorter. But if it's more of a question of what am I capable of, then give it a go and see what you're capable of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Going to your race the other week in Oman, obviously you're running over 114 kilometers, which is just crazy, but love that. I mean, crazy depending on, your perspective. Yeah. But for me, my perspective, I'm like, wow, I'm very impressed by that. But obviously when you're running those kind of distances, you can't plan for the whole situation. Things do go wrong. You mentioned to me that you got lost, I think around, was it 80 kilometers? Yeah. 80 kilometers in, lost for about 25 minutes, couldn't find the route. Watch had died.
Of course,
oh my gosh. So mentally, you're knackered, you're running on low sleep. I don't know, 80 kilometers, maybe like 30 hours in.
It was probably 26 maybe.
Yeah, okay. 26 hours in of, grinding. How do you stay mentally strong in moments like that? Because I know for myself personally, I would be like cursing. I'd be super stressed, wasting energy. How do you manage moments like that?
I manage them well.
You do?
I do. It's through experience. And I think this is where my deeper sense of spirituality and faith possibly comes in, is that, and this is what I love about endurance, because these lessons are applicable into everyday life as well. And I genuinely believe that things that seem to happen inadvertently out of our control, for example, I got lost apparently because some village kids had taken the flags away, that I believe there's always a deeper lesson and an air of service for us. And so when it happens, of course, I'm like, damn. But then I'm like, okay, well, this is happening, and I can get angry and annoyed and frustrated and start blaming people and things like that. But like, what am I actually achieving through that? Is that making me a better person and a stronger and more powerful version of myself? No. And that's what's important to me. So when that happened, I took breaths. I was like, okay, this is happening. But I was able, when I was waiting for the people behind me to catch up so they could tell me where to go because their watches had battery, I was standing there and I was like, I know there's a deeper purpose to this. And I think it is continually in that sense of trust and faith and that sense of patience that comes with life, because life is really a series of obstacles to overcome. And so if I'm kicking up a storm because I'm somewhat lost in an ultra marathon that I've chosen to partake in, it's like I can only imagine what my life would look like if that stressed me out. So I think it's important to be able to have those moments, to be able to really integrate those lessons that we can bring back into everyday life.
I love that. I keep saying that. I love that. But I do. I love that you're able to step back and think about what your overall goal is, and does this, does this work towards, am I going to be a nicer person because of this?
Yeah.
What use is it being stressed? Like, this isn't who I want to be.
And this is the beauty I find of endurance sport, is that sometimes road marathon runners will come into trail running and they apply the lessons that they learn in road running to trail running. It does not work. Something like an 114 kilometer run over 5,700 meters of elevation and gain. You're in the mountains of like Hajar Mountains of Oman. Part of this is that things will go wrong. And so it humors me when people get surprised or they get angry, because this is part of it. This is actually part of it, is being able to develop your sense of problem solving within this. So I find that is a big reason why I do these things, again, because I feel like I learn life lessons out in the mountains that I can apply into everyday life.
Yeah. Maybe I feel like I need to run 100K to get some patience. I need patience.
Well, that's the thing with something like this. It's like, it is a joke in the community, right? It's just like, you can have all the planning, all the strategy in place, and then guaranteed things will go wrong.
Yeah.
But that's part of it, and that's the fun of it. And it's not just about running, it's so much more.
Yeah, it is so much more. I mean, yeah, my life has changed forever.
Yeah.
In all the best ways. But no, I love that. I love that mindset, and I hope that I can apply it when things go.
I mean, you will be tested, right? And that's the thing. This, as I said, these things accumulate. So it's like you're going to learn in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of preparing for these events, obviously there's a huge mental aspect and obviously physical. How do you prepare? How do you train both physically and mentally?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I was actually on a podcast recently and they're like, we just saw that you summited Merah Peak. Would love to speak to you about your preparation in that. My preparation was literally 2 days before I got to Nepal. I had an intuitive hit to go climb Merah Peak and I booked. And then 2 days later, I started trekking. So I would say one of my lessons is it's very powerful to have a solid foundation of physical prowess and mental toughness. Full stop. I can decide to go summit something like a 6,500 meter peak within 2 days, and I can go get it done. So I think I'm very passionate about that, is continue to take care of yourself and harness expanding your mindset. I would say second to that, on a bit more of a practical level, I tend to give myself 3 to 4 months of training that I commit to. I will say
Is this physically?
Physically.
Yeah.
I will say that I wouldn't pitch myself as the person to go to for that. I am much more of an adventurer than a competitor. And so that is something I'm reflecting on at the moment, is if I want to actually concentrate on more performance and competition, my training would look different. It would be a lot more committed, I suppose, than what I currently am, or a lot more investment in terms of that. So I think that's a huge piece, because with these endurance pieces, everyone talks about the mind and how it's the most important. Your physical capacity is an extremely important part. If you have the foundation, I think you can go a long way. But if you're someone that's hardly done anything in your life, there's an air of physical enhancement you need to do to be committed to. But I think it depends on where you are and what your goal is. I think that's definitely what I'm learning, is I approach things differently. Like I've reflected, and I believe I would like to do the 114 in Oman again next year, with more of a competitive angle. And that is going to require a lot more investment than what I did for this one that I just did. So I think that, yeah, it definitely depends on where you're at and what your goal is. In terms of mindset, I feel like, as I said, these things accumulate, and I feel like I have a very, very, very solid foundation now. I feel like I could get through next to anything that is put in front of me. And when I come from the frame of like meeting my capacity and possibly doing something that's bigger than me that excites me, it's a beautiful frame to come into, and it actually empowers me to do more because I get excited about that challenge.
Ugh. I won't say it. Don't say it.
I love
that. So it's so true, though. I think, obviously it does depend on what your goal is. But one of the great things that I've noticed about endurance sport is also how much information is available online to help guide you. I don't know if you've used any of it, but I mean, even things like ChatGPT to come up with like a training plan or books to read. There's just so much information out there in this. And I wonder if it's because endurance sports aren't, about money. People are doing them to often see how far they can push themselves. And so I've noticed in the community and in the space, there's so much, on YouTube, the internet, books. I mean, every bookstore you go to, I feel like one of the main books on the shelf is something about mindset and somebody who's done something, out of the ordinary. So, I mean, there's just so much that you can do to tailor your program. Do you refer to like the internet?
Not really. I'm a bit more of like a experience learner. I kind of like to get out there and see what lands, because I find we can overwhelm ourselves, and that's what I'm very passionate about when I speak to, I decide to do Mary Peak, then 2 days later I'm just there. I think a lot of us can get bogged down in the logistics and preparation, and it stops us from just getting out there and seeing what we're capable of, where we're at, and then we learn from that experience, and then maybe we can come in with something new. And I also think there is so much conflicting information out there, and it overwhelms people. And so I think intuition is an incredibly important tool in all of this, because what lands for me might not work for you. And so own that, okay, I'm a vegan runner, own that I'm a meat-based runner, own that I do strength with my training, own that I only do running in my training. Like, explore and see what lands for you, and then own that. Don't be too influenced by other people's perceptions and preaching, because it might not be what's best for you.
Yeah, love that. Oh my God, cut that out. No, so true. There's definitely so much information out there.
Yeah.
But I've personally, for me, like you say, we're both very different. I have loved it. I've loved going on YouTube, watching people on adventures. I mean, it just inspires me so much, and it makes me feel like I can do it, because I have that mindset of...
Yeah. I do find the YouTube videos help. Like, watching people out there, I find that's very helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like more the details, I mean, you just showed me your very fancy watch.
Oh, yes.
Coming from someone whose like watch just ran out of battery during a run, because obviously it doesn't last for that long. So there's different approaches.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you can kind of bring in both sides, because I think, I possibly, some of my learning capacity moving forward is being more detailed with things like that, being a bit more scientific. And then I've seen people that are just so scientific and so spreadsheet based, and there is this air of like also feel is important in all of this as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a balance to be struck. Yeah. I've found personally, like, data's been really great to help motivate me, because I can see myself improving. But however, it does have this effect where it makes you push yourself probably too much, and you're not tuning in to actually like what's going on and being like, okay, Strava's telling me to run again, but I just need to actually take a week off, and managing that guilt of looking at the stats and stuff. That's something I definitely deal with, and maybe you will deal with if you...
Well, I've been seeing recently on the internet, there's been a big thing about the difference of influence and advice between Strava and Garmin, and one's telling you that you're not doing enough, and the other one's saying you need to sleep. And so just be mindful of that.
Exactly. And it's not going to know. It has no idea how you're feeling, does it? I mean, and there's so many other influences, your lifestyle, what you've got going on personally. It doesn't know. You don't know me. So I recently finished my first ever running race, 35 kilometers, 800
Well done.
meters elevation. Thank you. Thank you.
The elevation is very important.
Yeah, everyone take note of that, please. When I crossed the finish line, I didn't feel that sense of glory and happiness. I felt exhausted and kind of like, whoa, that was so hard. And yeah, I didn't feel this euphoric, I guess, feeling. How do you feel when you cross the finish line of these events? Do you feel euphoric? What goes on?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Gimme.
I do, but again, I approach it differently. I think you're a lot more competitive than I am. And I think sometimes that's the difference, and possibly why I have been on the back foot of that is I finish with a lot more in the tank. And again, it's something I'm reflecting on because I do tough things, but I finish with more in me. And I think there is something about giving it your all and coming across that finish line, feeling the way that you do. So again, I feel like it comes down to your goal. And possibly for you, it's about being able to partner that sense of giving it your all with that sense of achievement and glory. Like really understanding why it is that you do what you do and why you're doing it the way that you're doing it, I think is incredibly important. So for me, when I finished the recent run, so to speak, I felt glory because my main goal was to finish. That was, I mean, I guess my primary goal is to give it my all, my best and part of that was to finish. And so giving it my all in that sense was I didn't give it my all, ironically, because I was afraid that I would not finish if I did too much too soon, which again, I saw with Ash, the world record holder. He gave too much too soon and he didn't make it. And so I think it's very important about being clear on whether you cross that finish line or not, what is the thing that you can dedicate and commit to, that no matter what the outcome is, with what you can control, what is going to light you up. And if you do value glory, what is the thing that's going to make you feel glory no matter the outcome, because you can control what that is.
Yeah. So in my case, for example, do you think that like setting a time goal would have maybe changed that?
It's what feels true for you.
Yeah.
This is what I'm really passionate about in my coaching. When I first started coaching, it was more about what I would recommend to you. Now I really just like to be more of a guide or a reflector on like, well, what feels true for you, right? Because again, you and I are very different in the way that we approach things. So it's like I can tell you to don't worry about the stats and just go out there and adventure, and you're like, yeah, that's all and good, but there's pieces missing.
Leave the watch at home.
No, sell the watch. But it doesn't land for you, right? So I think it's about you really connecting with you, and that might be something that's thought-based, or it might be something that you can now plant in your mind, that when you're running, what is the thing that pulls you, that makes you feel that sense of glory? Because even glory is your own word, right? I don't use the word glory. So it's about understanding what's personal to you and what you find valuable, not what I do.
Yeah. Do you have exercises that you get people to do? How does one dive into that?
Well, for me, I mean, a lot of what I do is helping people live more congruent lives. I feel like congruence is power. And what I mean by that is guiding people to align with their own sense of truth. So a lot of my work is reflection work, as I said, and a lot of it is getting them to connect with their gut and their intuition. And there's a lot of resistance to it because we're not conditioned to think like that, right? Like that's not logic.
No, not at all.
And that's where the mass information can be overwhelming, because we're continually seeking to find answers outside of ourselves. Whereas my thing is all about what's within and what comes from within, and what is I believe that we all have unique energetic signatures that we're here to live out. And so right now, what is your sense of truth? What does your gut or your intuition tell you that feels true for you? And I think I even gave advice in the running community recently. There was a girl saying, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know the answer to what I should do for this running. And I said, go with your gut or your intuition. She goes, it's sitting in the corner quiet. And I said, your gut and your intuition will always have one answer. Your mind will always have more than two or more. And so it's always about I feel like, a reconditioning of trusting yourself, that you know what is best for you. I don't. I can reflect things back to you. But at the end of the day, you have the answers within you. And the missing piece for most people is just that sense of trust.
Yeah, it's so true. Your gut is never wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, they teach that. I think they were starting to teach that in high school about boys. No offense, boys. But, trust your gut on things. And if something's not sitting right with you, or if something is sitting right with you, that's going to be right. It's not going to be the noise that comes at you.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be the words. It's going to be how you feel inside. That is going to be, I mean, you're never wrong. You're just never wrong.
And understand that I think people make the mistake at times to think that your gut or your intuition or your path of truth is going to be the easy one. No. Sometimes it may be the hardest decisions that you make in life. And that's where the trust and faith comes in, that deeper sense of connection with possibly just yourself or something outside of yourself. Or for me, it's both. I believe that we are here to co-create and be able to trust in that, no matter where it guides you, to be able to continue to trust in that.
Yeah, so true. So true. And like you say, often they will be the hardest decisions because you're going against the grain and probably what all the noise is telling you to do.
It's your opportunity to evolve.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be uncomfortable by default.
Yeah. And it's just like doing a 114-kilometer race. The noise is... don't do it.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
I remember there were certain people that I had told that I was doing this in the running community, and as nice as they were, you can read all over their face that they're looking at me being like, you do know that's like really hard, right? Like, yeah, I do. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
And so I know, sometimes it comes from a deeper sense of care, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, with things like this, don't make your decisions based on the reflections and reactions of other people's perceived limitations. Make it from your own gut. And that's what I also said in that running community chat. I said, at the end of the day, don't worry about what other people are doing or what even you think you should expect of yourself. What is it inside that is telling you is the next right move, and make that decision.
Yeah, definitely. Because you'll live an extraordinary life, or a life that's your purpose, if you can do that. And I guess you must find that in your racing, where you've got social norms and limiting beliefs being thrown at you all the time, but you're swatting them away with your true self and what you believe. And I guess that makes you stronger and able to, in your own personal life, make decisions. Like if you're in a bad relationship, but you are like, I can't leave because, what are people going to think? Or it's not the right thing to do, blah, 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 blah. That gives you that strength to be like, I know I can make this decision and I know I can weather the storm because...
Absolutely. And for me, and this is obviously my beliefs, but it's like, I believe that there is a grander plan out there for us than we can ever imagine. And so I believe that having intent and being focused with goals and things are important. And also understand that when these things come into our life to disrupt us, that there is service to that. And I spoke about that with Mera Peak. It was like this moment where I didn't know whether I could do it, and I surrendered and I recentered. And then we were top of the peak first, with like the whole of Everest and everything, the sunrise, the perfect weather. And it was I just stood there just being like, I'm getting it. I'm understanding what this all means now. But you have to have that sense of trust and faith that comes with it, because it will continue to ask you to leap into some form of abyss, an unknown. But that, again, is where that self-development and expansion comes from. So it's up to you. How much do you want it?
Yeah. You should write a book.
Yeah, I should.
You really should. Such great messaging.
Yeah.
And such a great mindset, I mean, I wish I could just take your brain and put it in mine. No, I would.
It's just all butterflies and unicorns in there.
It is.
Not many numbers for you, sorry.
Yeah, take my numbers. Yeah. Take them, I don't want them. Oh my gosh, for real. No, it is. It's an amazing mindset. Extraordinary, I guess, is a great word, and becoming an extraordinary yourself, because I do feel like from my own experience that you just unlock different parts of you as you push yourself and you go through these different challenges. I don't know, you just unlock and get to know yourself deeper and you trust yourself more and you know who you are to a core. And I think when we talk about extraordinary people, I mean, they're not really extraordinary. They just know themselves to such a T that they can write books, that they can, sit down and dream big because they know exactly what's going on in their head, because they've continuously put themselves out of their comfort zone, listened to themselves, taken away the noise, and just like tuned in. And when you look at these people that do extraordinary, in inverted commas, things, they've all just done these, they've just, gone through and done these things and pushed themselves, unlocked, and
Yeah, it seems like a very present lesson for you because you mentioned noise a lot.
Yes.
And so I feel like that's something that you're currently moving through.
Yeah.
Is being able to... And I think I'm witnessing that just in the way that you're approaching your upcoming run. It's like you're beginning to recognize that, like, you can ask people for, like, their perceptions on what they think you're capable of. But at the end of the day, I know that you know what you are.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I think also... noise, because when you do make a decision, you, like, for me, this is like my step one maybe of beginning to like push myself physically and mentally, and you do question yourself, I guess, like, this is a big moment, and when you're doing something extraordinary or hard or something that's notable, people do weigh in, like, sometimes without even you asking, they weigh in. And so
I think it triggers people.
Yeah.
When they see you being more brave and courageous than they are, by default, unconsciously, they generally want to bring you down to their level because it challenges them, and a lot of people aren't ready for it.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people can't comprehend, 114 kilometers over 32 hours was it? I mean, for some people will be listening to that going like, oh,
yeah, well, that's what my friends were saying, right? I put you in a group of some of my close friends and family, and, they'd written to me just being like, I'd done so much in that time. I'd like gotten up and like gone to work and then like had dinner and then like woke up the next day and also gone back to work.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm like, yeah. And I was putting one foot in front of the other the whole time. I didn't sleep.
Yeah. And, doing things like this, it comes with noise. I think, like you said earlier, society, people try and limit your beliefs, and you don't really know what you're capable of because society's not structured in that way where people are encouraging you to go out. I mean, your close friends hopefully are, but society in general encouraging you to go out there and do these kind of crazy things. I mean, society's not structured like that. So it's just... not only dealing with your own limiting beliefs, but the limiting beliefs of like everybody around you as well.
And that's what you said. You just
so
eliminate that noise. And it's about you versus you. And it's about, and I feel like I'm excellent at this, is taking the ego out of it. And that's, I think, why it helps me to frame it as an adventure, because I'm like, it's not about my podium position or my speed. It's about the experience of it. And that's what enables me to achieve these things.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I've seen people that do care about those things, and there is a place for it. But I see for a lot of new entrants, they back out just as quickly as they went in, because that's too much pressure that they put on themselves. And I think it's a really beautiful segue and entry point to just possibly not concern yourself with that, at least at the start. Yeah, definitely. Pressure and me go hand in hand. Definitely. But I guess one way for me personally would be to avoid that would be to like set a goal, write it down, slow down, be like, okay, my goal is to finish, or my goal is to get in this time or whatever. So you're not burning yourself out through the whole thing. Yeah, you have like a sequence of goals. So you don't have to have one. You can have a sequence of them. And commit yourself to that. But I always find, and I had beautiful mentorship by a man called Ben Crow. He's the mindset coach to sort of the number one tennis players. And he emphasized it so much to me, and it was such a token mindset thing, but it's like, it is so important. Focus Set your goal as something that you can control. So at the end of the day, like the rest can come after it. The times, the podiums, things like that. But for your first goal, set it in a way that you know at the end of the day, no matter what happened, if you stuck in line with that, you win. And that's really played a massive part in my sense of peace in all of this experience as well.
If you can apply that everywhere in life, I mean, tick, win.
Well, this is what we spoke about, right? When I got lost and I had that era of patience, it's like that is integrated into my life now. And so be conscious of that. Like, take the value that comes from these experiences and bring it into your everyday life. And you, by virtue of that, become so much of a more grounded person, which is very magnetic.
Writes down notes. What advice would you have for anyone who's currently setting themselves a big challenge?
Very in line with what I've shared.
Yeah, I mean,
get very clear on what your goal is. Your goal, not somebody else's, not what you've learned, not what you've been conditioned to think in a way to approach something. Why are you doing what you're doing? I think that's really important, and stay true to that and be very brave and courageous in your commitment to that. Because we're all different. And so I would say also in the spirit of that, use it as an opportunity to get to know you on a deeper level, and use it as an opportunity for the development of self-trust. I see that as such an important part, is that in the way that we have grown up, it hasn't been necessarily programmed into us to trust ourselves. It's always about seeking externally to us. And I think that's very damaging, and it's a very powerless way to live. And so I would say use this experience in a way to come home to yourself, that again, you can continue to bring those experiences and those lessons back into your everyday life in a way that I always talk about a metaphorical backbone. I'm very passionate about that. What can build on that metaphorical backbone that you can move in life in a way that of congruence, of power, of self-trust, and of being able to really stand strong in who you are because you're doing the work in really understanding and connecting with what that is.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that is exactly why I love the challenge. And I think part of it is the why. I mean, if you can't find the why, you know, that having that mindset of why are you here? Why are you doing this? Why should you wake up at 3 a.m. and go to the mountains? Like, why? You know, you're never going to accomplish, well, my belief is you're not going to accomplish nearly anything close to what you're capable of if you're not able to understand your why. When I'm grinding and dying and, you know, in a really dark mental place during these challenges, you know, the why is what gets me through it for me personally. So I'm like, if that is just major. So not that I have great advice. But,
well, definitely. And I think in something like big adventures or endurance sports, what you will come to find is you need more than one. Yeah. That when you're out there, that first why is the first step.
Really?
Definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Definitely. That is what I've learned, is that sometimes it's not quite enough. And either you have the opportunity to integrate a second, third, and fourth version of that goes deeper and deeper, and or in that moment, you begin to, by default, naturally connect with actually a deeper sense of truth of why you're actually doing what you're doing. Because I think, again, we're conditioned to think a certain way, and I think a lot of this is around performance. And I think in endurance, it forces you into a deeper sense of self that possibly you weren't even open or aware of. And so I think that these also accumulate over time in terms of what is your why.
Wow. Can't wait. Can't wait to unlock it. Let's go, 100K.
You also unlock a deep sense of self-criticism as well. I think, you know, that's something to be prepared for. Absolutely. I think, well, I've certainly experienced it in my own life, and I know that many others do. There's a lot of self-criticism that comes when you get to these moments where you want to give up, And so, at the start, it's all very exciting. I'm on my adventure. I'm in this big event. And then when you begin to get tired and you begin to slow down and things don't go your way, as they inevitably do in situations like this, there seems to always be a voice that comes in and is like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? What are you doing out here? For me, it also says, why didn't you just be a Pilates girl?
Why don't you be hot girl?
Yeah, why don't you just go on hot girl walks? What are you doing in the mountains at nighttime on your own?
Yeah.
But it's important to be aware of this and to also have ways to mitigate that, because those ones are powerful and you sometimes see people listen to the wrong voice.
Yeah, I definitely felt that in my 35. I think I got to 16 kilometers in and I was thinking,
it was on the flat for you, right?
Yeah. On the flat.
Because you tell yourself this is going to be the easy part, and then all of a sudden it's not what you thought it was. And then that's when the self-doubt comes in. And so, but again, it's like there's ways in which you can be coached to prepare for things like this. But I think the best lesson is in the experience itself, because now that you've experienced that, you can take what you learned from that and put it into the next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can remember thinking, why are you doing this to yourself? You are so miserable right now. Like, this is just awful.
And that's that deeper sense of connection that's important, because you will find people say, and we see this with some people that we look up to, why on earth would you put yourself through that? And for some people, they're just not going to quite understand. But that's that deeper sense of self-exploration that's important to understand about why you're doing those things that to certain people may even look like a form of masochism, but it's not. It's a form of self-expansion and growth that is required, that you're consciously putting yourself in a situation to do hard things to evolve.
It's true, because I mean, now I feel like I'm in a place where I've had this experience, my one race, where I have a newfound respect for endurance athletes and these people doing, crazy distances. Like, there's people doing 300 miles now. I mean, it's wild.
It's incredible.
Where my mindset once would have been, are they all good?
Well, let's be honest. There might be a little bit of cray-cray in there.
Yeah. But you're kind of like, I guess my thought would be, what's gone wrong in their life for them to be throwing themselves into these situations?
Yeah, they're running away from something.
Yeah, and it's totally not the case. And the way you just put it.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And I think, because in my coaching, I work a lot with people who are essentially in self-destructive behavior, and I help them move through behaviors like that with adventure and endurance. And I think there is a time and place for something like that to be part of the transition in running away from something. And I think that there's a lot of judgment around that. And I think we have space to bring in a deeper sense of compassion for people that are just calibrating a new way of life, because I believe the self-destructive behavior is really just a coping mechanism. And if running is a coping mechanism that is better served for them right now, I have all the patience for that. And also, in that awareness, it's important to also begin to move through the deeper aspects of why you are running from what you are running away from.
Yeah, totally. And I totally get that as well. But I guess my previous conception was like, everyone who's doing it is doing that. That's what they're doing. Like they're all running from something.
Yeah.
And totally, like, I think exercise is a great way to move through, whatever you're going through. Obviously chemically as well, what it does to your body. So yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, just like you said earlier, how, I can't even remember the words that you used, but just how it's not necessarily, it's a deeper sense of self-exploration. Like it really is. And that's been a huge learning for me in the last even 2 months, and it's crazy. How well would you say you know yourself?
Extremely well.
Extraordinarily
well, yes, because it's been my main point of focus. It's what I feel like I'm here to do, is to self-explore and be able to share my lessons, insights, and wisdom from that. And then by virtue of that, being able to guide other people to do the same. As I shared, I'm very passionate about helping people to have a sense of congruence in their life. I feel it like an energetic wave, and I just want people to keep doing this in the way that they behave and how they speak. So, And that is that self-exploratory process. I think it's about deconditioning and deprogramming the way in which we've been brought up to be able to connect with a deeper sense of truth, and then have the courage and the bravery to be able to truly live to that. And so I would say, because that's been my point of focus for most of my life, I feel like particularly right now, I've just turned 36, I feel like I know myself inside out. And that does not mean that I am the perfect version of myself. I'm very self-aware when I'm not acting in congruence with my truth. But there's the awareness there that I didn't always have. And that's been my point of focus, is how real can I get with myself? And that's what I'm very passionate about in my coaching as well. Like, the first step I always say is like, lay it all out. Like, whatever you do not want to face, whatever you do not want to share with me, this is what we're doing today. And I think I've done that with myself. I've also done that with mentors. And I really experienced the power of being able to be completely honest with the version of self now, and then be able to give yourself space to be able to explore what is true and what is not, and be able to live more aligned with what feels authentic to you.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy that you know yourself that well, because honestly, that is where, in my opinion, true happiness lies, is when you know who you are, you're comfortable. I mean, the impact of knowing yourself is huge. I mean, it helps with your decisions in life. It gives you confidence. You don't make, any decisions that don't align with who you are. You don't really let people in who are going to have a negative impact. And, going to Oman, running a 114-kilometer race, when you signed up, you didn't even have a support crew. Making that decision, is not possible unless you know who you are.
Yeah, it's true.
That those self-doubts, all of those things happen when you're kind of jumbled and you haven't really unpacked
a lot of
all
people
that.
are in reaction mode rather than responding. So they're kind of bouncing from one thing to the other, like from one person's opinion to the other. And again, it's that about forming that metaphorical backbone, that it's like, I'm so deeply congruent with my own sense of truth and understanding, and also open for self-exploration, but people feel that. And so I used to be more about not upsetting people or not being conflicting with people's opinions. And now I just speak my truth from that sense of deeper groundedness and congruence. And however the chips may fall, they fall.
Yeah.
But it just feels very true for me.
Yeah. I think also when you know that when you know yourself so well, because to your core that you're not a bad person, but that this is just my belief and I'm not being malicious, and it's, I'm not bullying, I'm not. So being able to speak that truth and seeing how the chips fall, you're not doubting that you're being mean, and you're not doubting that, I wonder if I hurt that person's feelings. You're like, no, it wasn't. I know that I was just,
Well, one of my fundamental coaching aspects is being able to say no with love, because I think a lot of people adjust themselves to people pleasing. And it's like, I've learned that I don't have to agree with people, but again, to be very conscious in the way that I do that, and to be able to say, this is my opinion or my belief or what I feel like I know, but do it from a sense of love and grace, that it's like, I am still wanting to maintain as much connection as I can despite our disagreements. And that's been a really powerful lesson for me. Yeah.
And if everyone could do that, the world would be a better place, for real.
Yeah, if everyone could just be more real with each other. Like I have a somewhat, I guess, gift in feeling incongruence within people. And so I pick up on when people lie quite easily. And it saddens me rather than angers me, because I'm like, it's really sad that people don't feel safe enough these days to be able to speak their truth and be able to show up in who they truly are.
Yeah. And on top of that as well, not even knowing what their truth is.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're not necessarily encouraged to connect with that, because I do feel like in my own experience, it somewhat is a bit of a disruptive way to live. And because it enables you the space to question things. And I think, in what I've spoke about, sort of societal programming, it doesn't always align with what the majority of people want for us.
No. Moral of the story is everyone should do endurance sports.
Yeah. I feel like, I do feel like for people, I do advise this, for people that are really struggling with their sense of meaning and purpose in life, I feel like it's an excellent way to be able to connect with some of that. You can do these like coaching techniques and questions and find your purpose, and it's just never quite landed for me. I feel like doing something like that, it's like when you do something that feels bigger than who you are and what you've ever done before, it's like you start whether you've prepared the why or not, you start to connect with it. And then again, to be able to bring that deeper sense of purpose and meaning into your everyday life.
I feel like in my own personal life, I've always known who I am, but that's because I grew up with tennis being like a big part of my life and having to do really hard things for me in those times and, performing under pressure, blah, blah, blah. But that's given me confidence in my life to be able to, go to America, to be able to go to London with no money and just not hope, but know that it's going to work out, Move to Dubai with Lawrence on a whim, all these things, as you say, they become easier, but they wouldn't have been possible without me having to be in those situations where you're uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And that's the accumulation benefit, is that you begin to experience the pattern and you begin to understand, okay, I've been through this before. I know what to do in this situation. I know what comes out the other side of it too.
Yeah. And I know how my gut feels.
Yes.
I know how I'm going to feel. And just being like, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine. I don't care if I fail. I don't care. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really freeing.
It is. It's a beauty. And I think as human beings, that is one of the most fundamental experiences that we are all seeking, is that sense of freedom.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much. I am going to listen to this every night before bed. Give me that mindset. I'm going to cut out every love that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be cringing on the editing with that. But no, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We've just met, but you inspire me so much, and I am really excited to see what the future has in store for you and what you're gonna line up for yourself. We'll be back next year.
Yes.
With an update.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's been excellent meeting you. It's been really beautiful, and I am very excited to see your next run and what develops from that, as we've spoken to. So
me too. One word: chaos. So.
Yeah.
It will be chaos.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. If you've made it this far through the podcast, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. Please do share this around, comment, like, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're feeling up to it and you want to share your own story, please do reach out. Whether you're a friend or a stranger, I'd love to hear from you. Remember, sharing is caring, and you never know who you'll help with your own story. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.